2 years ago. It was a little bit different back then. Things were done differently. And for 7 years, I struggled trying to connect with a higher power, and I couldn't connect, couldn't do it. And 7 years later, I reached a moment in my life when I surrendered my will and my life over the care of God, and I didn't know who He was. I just know that He entered into my spirit. I'd never read a thing about Him, yet He came. And in a miraculous moment, my life changed. And so what I did, and a lot of you people in this room I've read the big book with, I would sit down and we would read the big book line by line, page by page. And somebody who came before me would explain to me what it said. Well, at the same time, I was reading the good book, the Bible, and trying to figure things out. And about 13 years sober, my wife says, "Don't you think we ought to go to church? We're raising kids, you know. I love what you and your friends are all about, but let's go to a church." And I sat inside a local church, and this pastor preached, and every time he said something, I go, "He stole that out of the big book. He got that out of the big book. These guys are all reading the big book. What are they doing?" And then I figured out that it came the other way. And the more I started studying the history of Alcoholics Anonymous, the more I found out about its origin, and then the more I understood its origin and what they did, the freer I became. So, we take the big book and we take the Bible and we kind of spin them together. And I call that biblical recovery. Not only do we use the big book, we use the good book, and we kind of try to understand some of these things that are left nebulous. Because we worry a lot about newcomers. Oh my gosh, we don't want to scare them off. 65% of America claims to be Christian. Another 5% are either Muslim or Jewish, which means almost 70% of people are not afraid to hear about God or been raised around it. So me, when I got here, I was an agnostic. I'd never heard God. I was like a cat on a hot tin roof. Don't say that. I was one of those guys. But I kept coming back because the Spirit is in the room. God is present. He's present here in the people that are here. All different paths, all different parts of your journey, but He's here and He's present. So why am I talking about temptation and inspiration? Well, it's the key to alcoholism. Understanding temptation, and we don't talk about it anymore. Bill Wilson talks about it a number of times in the big book, and that was so good, Chad. You did it right on cue. Way to go. I told Chad, I have no idea what I'm going to say tonight. I'm just going to go, so try to keep up with the slides. But temptation is defined as the desire to do something or to have something, especially something that's bad, not good for us, right? We're tempted to do it. And Bill Wilson talks about temptation a number of times in the big book. And he says a whole bunch of things, and here we're on page 5. But before I get there, I'm just going to real quickly bang on that, and then I'm going to show you the origin of where that comes from. Bill Wilson says, "Save for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink had never returned." He talks about once he's well. "We are not fighting it, neither we're avoiding temptation." In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which poses to shield a sick man from temptation is doomed. Never, never, never try to arrange a man's life to shield him from temptation. And then later on, I'll read the parts about inspiration. But you don't have to get very far in the big book, and Bill Wilson tells you about what it is. And he says, "I woke up. This had to stop." He's got that moment when he knows alcohol's beaten him. A couple of pages forward, he'll say, "If there is a devil, he certainly has me." And then at the bottom of that page, that's the page where he refers to Christ. And then at the bottom he says, "I could see where religious people were right after all." He's pointing his finger to the answer that he'd gotten from Reverend Shoemaker from the Oxford group at the Episcopalian Church where Ebby was living in the rescue mission. And he says, "Someone had pushed a drink my way and I'd taken it. Was I crazy?" Bill Wilson refers to that in the big book as a strange mental blank spot. The inability to recall with sufficient force of memory what happened the last time I took a drink. Somebody shoves the drink my way and I take it. Am I insane? I don't want to drink, but I do. I didn't want to keep drinking. I couldn't stop. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone who pushed it my way and I took it. So he's describing these things, and when you go to the good book, you're going to get a whole definition of how this all works. So let's jump and say, there's the foundation that I want to talk from tonight. And now, if you haven't read the Bible, that's okay. It's all good. You don't need to. Not tonight. Not right now. You don't need to be a theologian, right? You just need to be open-minded. But temptation was created in the beginning. In the Bible, in the book of Genesis, it's the 3rd chapter. You don't have to go very far. It's a few paragraphs. And it describes where Adam and Eve are in the garden. And they're created beings. And it says that God took his own breath and breathed it into man and brought him to life. So a man is a 3-part being. I have a body, a soul, and a spirit. This particular body has a physical allergy to alcohol. If alcohol gets in this body, I have this craving that's insatiable. Not everybody has that. So I've got this broken body, and because most alcoholics are pretty intelligent, we try to solve our problem. And when we can't, it defeats us, and the more we try, the more it defeats us, the more compulsive our behavior comes. And we don't realize that there's a spirit. I had no idea that I had a spirit, didn't know what it was. I thought it was my mind. And I thought I had to correct my mind somehow, and I kept exerting myself, trying more and more and more to exert myself. And the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, when the spiritual malady is overcome, we'll straighten out mentally and physically. What's the spiritual malady? Noah talked about it, and it starts in the garden. So God creates man, and he creates woman, he puts them in this garden, and he's walking around with them. It says he walked in the garden with them. Can you imagine these beings that are created by God, and they're in relationship with him, and he's walking around, and they're strolling around, and they're just having a great time? See, but God wanted something from man when he created him, and he did something with man. He put him above everything, above all the angels. Man was his most precious of all created beings. And there's angels right now in heaven with their wings in front going, holy, holy, holy is the Lamb. I think they moved their wings when they heard you sing. And so when God does that, an angel falls, and they call him Satan, and he comes down, and he's really kind of upset. He's really not happy at God. And God creates man to be in a relationship with him. But what kind of a relationship can you have if you don't have the ability to reject? You can't love without the ability to reject. If I force you and create you just to love me, it's not really love. I have to choose you. And so if you're God, just think about it for a minute, and you're going to create man, and you want man to love you, you have to give him free will. And in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says the problem is I have no willpower. Lack of power, that was my dilemma. My willpower is shot. And so what happens in that garden is temptation. And I'll show you the parallels in the big book in a minute. So, here's Eve hanging out. Here comes the serpent, which means deceiver in the ancient language, comes up and says, yo, hey, did God really say you couldn't eat that fruit over there? Hey, yo, really? No, you can't drink? Come on, bro, just have a beer with me. You'll be all right. Bring it. Yeah. She doesn't bite. Nothing's really going to happen. Denial. Yeah, I'll be all right. But she doesn't really bite. So he comes at her again. He said, God only told you couldn't eat from that tree of knowledge because if you do, you'll be just like God. You'll be your own God. Doesn't that sound good? That's to put ourselves above God. When I got here, I was God. Right? I was God. There was nothing more supreme in the universe than me. I don't know if anybody else felt that way. But I felt like I was. And then finally, she succumbs and she falls. And something very interesting happens. He says, did God really say you would die? Bill Wilson uses the same language. He says, for me to drink is to die. If an alcoholic drinks, what happens? It's a spiritual death. So here they are, they're walking along, strutting along through the garden, and all of a sudden they partake, and boom, The death is that the spirit that God had breathed into him left, and a new spirit comes in. The Bible says there's only two spirits in the world, spirit of truth, spirit of error. And we're born separate from God. We're not good people that went bad. We're people who are born separate with God with a homing beacon inside of us. Deep down in every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God. That's how Bill Wilson put it. In the book of Kings, it says that still small voice. It's like a homing beacon. And so when we're experiencing those things that Noah was talking about, that loneliness, that hole, we're trying to fill it with everything that we can, and we can't fill it. No matter what we put in it, we can't fill it. But we don't know that there's this other way of life if you're anything like me. And then, there's all these creeds, these church creeds. Recovery Church has no creed. A creed is a set of rules and things that we believe in unison. We don't have a creed, right? In our group conscience, we chose Jesus Christ as our God, which is what it says to do in AA when you form a group. Each group select a loving God as he expresses himself in his group conscience. Anyway, but we don't have that sort of creed, like you must believe this way. And so here they are, they're in the garden, and the Spirit leaves them. And then every man born from that time is born separate, with an overwhelming desire to worship. And so what we do is we worship all kinds of things, usually money, property, prestige, trying to fill that hole until that miraculous moment when we believe. Now, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm going to go back to that for a second. Right around page 35, there's this story about these two guys, Jim and Fred. You guys all know them. You guys have all read this, right? One guy gets loaded because he's angry, and he holds on to his anger and resentment. Fred is the most selfish man you'd ever want to meet, and he gets drunk because he's selfish, anger and self-centeredness. And on page 42, it's after they go through what leads us to the temptation. He's going along, and the thought pumps into their mind, and instead of having our eyes on where they need to be, on God, our eyes are somewhere else. And the deceiver pops a thought into your head. That's the moment of temptation. That's the moment of inspiration. Go ahead and hit that next slide. That's the moment that we need somebody to stand in the gap. And Bill Wilson describes that as inspiration. It's our 11th step. When we get there, we're getting inspiration. Inspiration is defined as influence or action on a person believed to qualify him to receive communicated sacred revelation. What all that means, because that came out of a dictionary, it means that I have conscious contact with God. I sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God. So I surrender my life to God as I understand Him. I didn't understand Him at all. I walked out of this room, this man says to me, Rick, there is a God. He lives in heaven. He's already forgiven you for everything you've ever done and everything you ever will do. You can ask the Palafroni brothers what I did. I went to high school with them. Yeah, right? A lot. We all did these things. And he said, you're already forgiven. And when he said those words, I started crying like a baby. Crying. I was just like your father described you. Unemotional, unable to feel, all of that. And in that moment, it was like something got ripped out of me and something new got shoved in, and I intuitively knew what used to baffle me, just as Bill described it. And as I leaned into that, I walked out of the room, and there was a man there, and he looks at me, and he goes, what the hell happened to you? I was inexplicably different. I said, I don't know, I just prayed with Chuck, and I think I'm a Christian now. That's all I knew. I knew that I'd ask God to enter into my heart. And that's all I knew. And I left that place timid as, I was like scared. Like, what kind of cult did I just get into? Right? This thing is just like some big veiled cult. What am I doing? So how do we do this thing? And we put a lot of weight on our 12 steps. And I'll tell you that the old timers used to do them really, really fast. Up until 1953, they did them in 4 one-hour sessions. Then they moved it to 12. Then the 12 and 12 came out, and we quit taking steps, and we started studying them. What the steps are is a method of surrender and getting the things that stand between us and God, and learning how to do an inventory and how to confess that, and then how to make amends for the things we've done wrong. It's not brain surgery. And we're told not to sit in morbid self-reflection, but we do. We'll take a newcomer, we'll let them stay in, step 4 for 100 years, right? I'm working on my 4th step, been on it for a year. Or I hear some guys go, you're going to stay on step 1 for a year? Are you kidding me? I'm going to have a strange mental blank spot. Somebody's going to shove the drink my way and I'm going to take it. And when I'm inspired and when I'm connected to God and I know how to pivot my thought line back to Him because we're connected, that doesn't happen. Emma, how am I doing on time? I got 5. That's great. Okay, so if I come on now. So how do I get the inspiration? What this prayer thing? I don't know how to pray. My wife and I were driving down to Southern California a few years ago, and I had been doing the 11th step forever. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. And when you say that, it's kind of this rhythmic prayer that we've memorized. And we're listening to this pastor on the radio, and he goes, look, you got to ask these 2 simple questions. God, what do you want me to know? And what do you want me to do? That's the 11th step. I wake up in the morning, I put my boots on, I say, God, I'm yours. What do you want me to know? And what do you want me to do? And then when things pop up, I know I'm new. I know I'm different. I know I'm not that old man anymore. I know that my human spirit is fused to the Holy Spirit, and that's who's living in me, and the life that I'm living out is dedicated and devoted to Him, even when I don't act like it all the time. But I'm not going to buy the lie that I'm somehow sick. Healed, whole, complete, perfect in every way. God heals. Bill Wilson talks about in his story, they talk about being healed. I just wanted to thank God. He was so wonderful for curing me of this terrible disease. That was the language of the old timers. Somewhere along the way, things changed a little bit, so we kind of pull that back together here. But when I get down and I do that, the next thing I want to do is I want to say, less of the old man and more of the new. When my behavior gets out of line, I got these real simple prayers. Okay, prayer and meditation. Let's see the next slide. Oh my God, here's some parallels for you. So there's this great story on page, and I'm going to end with this. There's this great story on page 154 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to turn to it in my book so I can go through it. And Bill shows up, and he's going to buy a company where he meets Dr. Bob that weekend. And he steps into the bar, and it says, he goes to try to buy this company. His business doesn't work out the way he wants it. It says, bitterly discouraged. He found himself, he's talking about himself as if he's somebody else, in a strange place, discredited, broke, physically weak, and sober only a few months. He saw his predicament was dangerous, and he wanted so much to talk to someone. Then he goes on. On dismissal one afternoon, I paced the hotel lobby, wondering how I would pay the bill. Stress. Life showing up. At one end of the room was a glass covered with a local church directory, and down the hall was an open door to an attractive bar. He could see the gay, that's happy, crowd inside. In there, he would find companionship. He would receive, lost my place. And release, unless he took some drinks. He might not have the courage to scrape an acquaintance and would be lonely for the weekend. He's got all these problems, loneliness, money problems, all these things. Of course I wouldn't drink. Does it sound like the girl in the garden? But why not sit, hopefully, at a table with a bottle of ginger ale? Who does that? I'm going to go in the bar and nurse a Coke for $10. Then, after all, had he not been sober for 6 months? Did he really say he would die? And fear gripped him. He was on thin ice. Again, the old insidious insanity of the first drink. See, he knows what it is. He knows that it's temptation, and that is temptation. And he knows exactly what to do. Put your eyes back on Jesus and go right to work. Find another one. Nothing ensures immunity from the first drink more than intense work with another alcoholic. It always saves the day. And he goes on and he says, but what about his responsibility? Now his mind's going back to his work. His family, the men who would die because they would not know how to get well. The ones that are waiting for you. And he goes on, and he says, there must be many such men in this town. He would phone a clergy, and then in the next thing he says, sanity returned, and I thanked God. The trick when tempted is to put our mind first back on God. God, this thought's not from you. This is not what I want. What do you have for me? What do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? And then immediately pivot and do it, build it, pick up the phone and go serve someone. Don't try to take that out of order. Because if somebody doesn't answer that phone when you call it and you haven't given it to God, you might end up with it. Prayer and meditation, both of them are simple. Both of them can pat that strange mental blank spot. There comes a time in every alcoholic's life where they're going to be tempted. But the scriptures say that God will never tempt us beyond what we can endure. Never. The trick is learning how to pivot our thoughts back to Him. How do I think about God? However you think about God. However you think about God today. However that is, turn your thought line back to Him. Because we grow. And the psalmist writes in the Bible that God delights in our seeking. You want to please God, seek God. And help His children. So, that's where I'm going to close. If you liked what you heard tonight, we're going to be starting a step study group on Friday nights, probably in May. And we're going to go through, if any of you have been to RATS or Power or anything like that, we're going to do something very similar. We're going to do what I did tonight. We're going to expound on what's in the big book. We're going to do it over a 12-week period. We'll get more information out to you. But we'd really like to share what we've learned along the way. And I hope that hits somebody's heart tonight and serves. And Eleni, thank you very much. Noah, thank you too. I didn't follow a single note.
Light's bright tonight. Good evening. I'm Diana, alcoholic and child of God. So this is the time that we do recovery crosses.